So these are the questions we have to ask, because if we need to have a Uganda that is separate from individuals that rule Uganda. We don't need to be, of recent when Idi, or when the leader of one of the opposition parties was arrested, everyone was thinking, okay, those who don't know details about Uganda, they were thinking, maybe Idi Amin still rules Uganda. Because the stories they hear about Idi Amin are the same stories coming out of Uganda to date. So when is Uganda going to be separate from Idi Amin Dada? When is Uganda going to be separate from Yoweri Kaguta Museveni? Now, this is where we come in as individuals. One, we have to know who we are as individuals, because identity is everything. So when I know who I am, when I know I'm Brian, I'm born of this man, of this woman. This woman and this man are born of so-and-so. So-and-so are born of these clans. They are born of these lineages. These clans are born of this tribe. This tribe is born here, in this area. We came from here. We are Bantu, blah, blah, blah. When you know who you are, then that's when you can contribute to who we are. Without knowing who you are, you can't know who we are. So the point is, if we go back to knowing who we are, and that brings me to who we are as Africans, generally. If we know who we are as Africans, then we can think, how should we think? Because from knowing who we are, then we can stop singing praises or even reciting what people tell us, because you know who you are, so you can think on your own. Now, knowing who I am as a Mchiga will help me in two ways. One, I will know what the Bachiga do. After knowing what the Bachiga do, I can do what the Bachiga do and perfect it. After perfecting what the Bachiga do, I will be rich. That makes me financially independent, so I cannot be bought off by the regime. If I am financially independent, he is financially independent, everyone is financially independent, then we can speak, because our opinion is not on sale. We'll not end up like the brilliant Andrew Mwendas, who are hawking their skills and brilliance for bread. Because then we control. I'll give you an example. Nandala Mafadi, the leader of opposition presently, also chairman of Bwesigye Cooperative Union. Through the cooperative union, he has enabled many people in his region to earn money on their own, which they put in their pockets. Now, if you look at the recent elections, flawed as they were, with soldiers all over Sironko, they managed to vote against the gun, against beating, against bribes, against intimidation, against threats, because they own their pockets. And the financial independence comes with some weird courage and boldness. We saw pictures of civilians beating up soldiers. Not that the soldiers are weak, but because we no longer fear the soldiers. I'm not saying the soldiers are weak. The soldiers are actually strong and brutal. But we no longer fear, because you're going to sit there. The fact that they think you're not going to vote who they want, they will beat you anyway. So do you have any choice? Naturally, you defend yourself. And that's what the civilians were doing. Here, why we don't do that is because we lack the financial independence and that mental colonization of, if you do not support the regime, you'll die poor. If I know that I can be rich without supporting the regime, then I can make... We have very many examples of opposition members who have defected because they've been bought. Yeah. So the financial independence is important. Coming from identity, from our identity, because I'm not going to talk about industrialization, blah, 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 blah. That's total bullshit to us. We can do what we do normally and earn a lot of money from it. They're growing coffee. They're getting rich from growing coffee. So, do I need to go to school to grow coffee? When I go to school and they're teaching me this, do I need to know English to grow coffee? They are holding all of us into schools and stopping us from digging, which would earn us a living. And then they make us beggars on the street. After making us beggars on the street, then we go to the regime and say, some handouts. Can I attend the inauguration ceremony and I get 20,000 Ugandan shillings so I can have dinner? So it's a whole web of both economic, political, social, and religious colonization by fellow Ugandans. Because you go to church, all the Pentecostal churches in this country are part of the regime and are part of the repression. There is a time in 2005, 2006, during the elections, when a renowned pastor, prophesied that a presidential candidate was going to die before the election. and he said an opposition presidential candidate is going to die before the election, directly to someone's mind, why would I vote a dying man? This is a pastor. This is religion. Recently, when Colonel Bwesigye was being arrested, we saw a head of security in a certain known church was the head of the brutality, was the one who was dousing him in pepper spray, breaking car windows with pistols, with hammers, and this is the head of security in a church and is a renowned member of that church. What gospel is that person preaching? So we have churches. I wouldn't want to call them churches because these are actually businesses, political businesses. So at the end of the day, we need to look at identity and independence. Independence not at the national level, because that's really not important to us. Independence at the personal level. Now, when we're independent as individuals, when we can control our expression, I say what I want to say because I feel it, not because I've been paid to say it, not because I'm fearing to say something, so I say something else. I say what I feel. Now, that's the freedom we need as a country, and that's when we can talk about Uganda as a country. That's when I can make up my mind and go and support the Uganda cranes without fearing. That's why I can make up my mind to go to Kololo, which is a national symbol, without fearing that because I don't support the regime, then I'm going to be chased away. Two, apart from identity, another crucial matter is our leadership. Of course, I was talking about the leadership, even though I was talking about identity. But our leadership, we do not have community leaders. We have politicians, businessmen who are doing politics as a business rather than community leaders. You have people who are looking at how much do they earn rather than what they are doing. I'll give you examples. There are very many individuals we know who joined parliament straight as they left university. Right now they're still in parliament. If you ask them, what have you done besides being in parliament? Nothing. We know about parliamentary pension schemes. To me, it's ridiculous that someone who is going to serve a term of 5 years is thinking about a pension scheme. Yet we do not have a pension scheme to cover millions of Ugandans who work 20 years, 30 years. But you have someone who is going to serve parliament for only 5 years and is thinking about a pension scheme.
Adding 20 million per month.
And driving vehicles that are taller than some of us. So at the end of the day, we do not have leadership in this country. And this almost cuts across the board. Both the opposition and the government. Of course, the opposition, we almost do not have an opposition. What we have are people who are disgruntled with whatever that is happening. And so today, if you came up on the street and started doing something, you will find people joining you. They do not care about your problem or about your cause. They have their own problems and their own causes.
Yes.
So they come because of their own causes. You don't control them. When Colonel Bwesigye was walking, people were walking for different reasons and connected to his walking. But the fact that he walked meant a lot to them, irrespective of why he was walking. The fact that he walked meant a lot to them. It meant that this regime is not invisible. It meant that they can make us poor, they can make us kneel for them because we fear being beaten, they can make us do everything, but they cannot win our minds. And that simple things hurt them the most and threaten them. That by walking, when they have told you not to walk, which is ridiculous because I don't think walking is a crime anywhere, so you expose them. And by exposing them, it emboldens us. I do not think he paid anyone to walk with him. When we went to Entebbe to welcome him, he didn't pay us. I spent my personal money to go to Entebbe to welcome him because it was a sign of showing that whatever that was happening at Kololo was illegitimate and was total drama, tragedy, because it doesn't represent our will. So at the end of the day, we don't necessarily need to support Bwesigye. But the fact that he has stood against the evil regime that rules us is enough. He's an idea. We don't need to know about his personality and what he has gone through in his life. That's his personal life. He suffers as we suffer as Ugandans, but he's not part of those that are making us suffer. That is the most important. That the people who are not making us suffer understand that we are suffering. And I think at a personal level, he's a rich man. I don't think he's a poor man. I don't think he's like me, who sometimes will walk to work because I have no money. Even when there is no protest, I'll walk to work because I'm actually doing austerity measures on my part because I need supper. So because I need supper, I can cut down costs and then walk. Bwesigye has cars, he can use a car. But instead, we have people who are buying cars worth 400 million Ugandan shillings. Which amount of money can feed thousands of people for one day? But people are interested in buying cars on government money, and we are buying planes. Again, I've talked about war and the useless wars we fight that do not help us Ugandans, and people are buying planes. People are buying private jets. I think even the British Prime Minister does not have such a jet for his personal movement. A Ugandan president has such a jet. One time used to help the daughter produce.
German.
In Germany? When our hospitals lack the basic... There is a protester who went to a hospital and undressed because someone else was being asked for gloves. You, a civilian, a citizen, is expected to come with gloves to a public hospital. And someone, the president's daughter, is flying to Germany to produce in a government jet. It doesn't make sense. Of course, because of very many factors and because of the human fear factor, we may not express our anger as we would want to express our anger. But there is a lot of anger. How can an individual born in affluence, born in power, we don't know how the father earns money, we don't even know how she earns money herself, we don't know known jobs they do, the sons-in-law, the jobs we know that they do are connected to the state. When I set up a law firm and I want to compete for a government contract with them, they will beat me. I will not even know there is such a government contract because it will not be advertised in the newspapers. It will be given to them without our knowledge. I'm told one of the daughters is the head of domestic affairs in State House. Who advertised that job? We know individuals who have studied catering, cooking, blah, blah, blah. Why do they advertise the job and we apply? And they're being paid billions of money for such jobs. It doesn't make sense to us as the citizens. What we can do, because we have talked and we are annoyed, everyone can see that, but what can we do? One, I like giving the example of Nandala Mafabi. We go back to our communities. When we go back to our communities, we build our communities. We become independent. Our mental colonization will stop, and then we can speak against that. And then I believe in the power of speech. I believe in the power of writing. When we write, when we speak, we know their hearts are hardened by the corruption, their hearts are hardened by the greed, but there is nothing that can stop us when we are independent. We might be poor, we might not be rich as them, but if we can afford 1 meal a day, if we can afford a roof, if we can afford some herbs to treat us, I'm not talking about medicine because it's expensive, if we can afford some herbs that can treat us, then they cannot harm us. They can kill us, but the 10 lives they have already so far taken in the walk to work protests will haunt them and will re-energize us because they cannot conquer that is within us. There is that they cannot touch. They may even maim us. Several thousand, close to 1,000 of people have been injured in the walk to work protests. Personally, I was caned. I have bruises. I had bruises then. But that maiming, those scars, are going to remind me of what my country is.